Hello everyone, this is Anime Octopus. Welcome back to the channel, where imagination has no limits and every story takes a different path. Today, we dive into a brand new Naruto fanfiction scenario filled with betrayal, pain, revenge, and destiny. What if the DWMA betrayed Naruko Uzumaki? How would she react? Who would stand beside her? And what happens when the one everyone abandoned becomes stronger than anyone ever expected? Before we begin, here's a quick disclaimer. Disclaimer: this channel is created for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage, music, or characters used in my videos. Full rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now then, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. Naruko Uzumaki stood beneath the silver moon of Death City, her long brown trench coat fluttering in the cool evening wind. She was 26 years old, with wild spiky blonde hair that framed her face and covered her right eye. Her bright blue eyes shone like clear oceans, and the three whisker-shaped birthmarks on each cheek gave her a fox-like charm. Wrapped around her forehead was a band of white cloth marked with a mysterious eye-shaped symbol with rippling circles and 6 comma-like marks. She wore a black V-neck shirt with an orange upside-down cross, dark blue jeans fastened with 2 white belts, leather gloves with metal plates, and black and orange shoes marked with the word Hades in deep crimson lettering. In one hand, Naruko carried her great gunbai fan, painted brown with a black border and a swirling red whirlpool at its center. A long chain dangled from its handle. In the other hand rested her towering double-edged crimson scythe with its smooth white handle gleaming beneath the moonlight. Across from her floated Lord Death himself, cloaked in flowing black cloth with jagged edges. His mask resembled a cheerful cartoon skull, though tonight his expression felt heavy with concern. His large gloved hands folded together as he looked at his former student. "Naruko," Death said softly, "do you truly wish to disturb the peace we worked so hard to build?" The young Meister lowered her weapon slightly. For a moment, silence filled the ruined streets around them. Long ago, Naruko had once laughed easily and dreamed brightly alongside her dear partners, Konan and Satellizerl. Bridget. But after a terrible tragedy nearly took them away from her forever, Naruko's heart had changed. To save their spirits, she had absorbed part of their souls into her own. Since then, she had carried their memories and strength everywhere she went. "I don't believe peace is something that simply appears," Naruko replied quietly. "People must protect it every day. And sometimes, the world needs to change before it can truly heal." Death watched her carefully. Even after all these years, he still cared deeply for his strongest student. Naruko possessed courage unlike anyone he had ever known. She did not fear darkness, failure, or even destiny itself. The air around them shimmered with power as the two prepared themselves. Naruko leapt gracefully into the sky, spinning both her scythe and gunbai in a dazzling arc. Death blocked her strike with his own mighty scythe, the clash sending glowing sparks dancing through the air. A playful grin crossed Naruko's face. "Fox, fox, brilliant rose flame," she called. Warm orange and white fire spiraled outward like the petals of a glowing flower. Death raised his sleeve and shielded himself as the flames swirled harmlessly around him, lighting the city in brilliant color. "You've become incredibly talented," Death admitted proudly. Naruko landed lightly on the ground. "I learned from the best, Death-sensei." The two exchanged another series of swift attacks, but neither fought with hatred. Their battle felt more like a test between teacher and student, a conversation carried through skill and spirit rather than words alone. Death released waves of crackling energy across the street, but Naruko vanished in a swirl of black smoke and reappeared behind him. Uzumaki wavelength, Hermes trial. She swung her weapons in a crossing motion, creating a giant spiral of wind that roared through the sky like a silver dragon. Death answered by summoning a massive skull-shaped shield, protecting the city from further damage. The force of their powers shook the clouds overhead, but both warriors carefully guided their attacks away from the homes and schools nearby. Even in battle, they refused to let innocent people suffer. Naruko paused for a moment, breathing heavily. A small cut on her cheek slowly healed as moonlight touched her skin. Death noticed and smiled beneath his mask. You still carry that stubborn determination. And you still underestimate me, Naruko teased gently. Suddenly, glowing purple energy surrounded her body. Behind her appeared a great circle of rippling symbols that floated like stars. 6 paths, almighty light. Instead of destruction, radiant beams of purple light burst upward into the heavens, illuminating the dark clouds above Death City. The citizens watching from afar gasped in amazement as the night sky transformed into a sea of shimmering color. Death lowered his scythe, staring upward. It's beautiful, he whispered. Naruko smiled faintly. Power doesn't have to exist only to destroy. For the first time that evening, the tension between them softened. Death floated downward until he stood only a few feet away from her. Then what is it you truly want, Naruko? She looked toward the glowing city skyline. A world where strength protects people instead of frightening them, she answered. A world where no one has to carry pain alone. The old Reaper grew quiet. Deep down, he realized the fierce young Meister before him had never stopped caring. Beneath her cold exterior still lived the brave and hopeful girl he once taught. At last, Death chuckled warmly. Well then, he said, resting his scythe on his shoulder, perhaps this old teacher still has a few lessons left to learn from his student. Naruko blinked in surprise before laughing softly herself. The moon shone brightly over Death City as teacher and student stood together beneath the silver sky, no longer as enemies, but as two guardians searching for a brighter future. Both gunbai and the scythe glowed with a warm golden light. In an instant, the two weapons gently dissolved into Naruko's body. A second burst of yellow light shined across the battlefield like a rising sunrise. When the glow finally faded, a brand new weapon rested in Naruko's hands. It was a magnificent double-bladed sword. The hilt was black and deep purple, smooth and shining like polished stone. On both sides of the hilt rested a swirling red whirlpool symbol with the kanji for tides, glowing beneath it. The twin blades were snow-white, bright as moonlight on fresh snow. Naruko twirled the weapon gracefully around herself. A swirling aura of purple and crimson energy wrapped around her like dancing waves. Madness wavelength, chaos screech of tyrant god, shouted Naruko. Rippling circles filled with floating comma-shaped marks appeared before her mouth. From the center burst a mighty sonic wave made of black, red, and violet energy. The powerful sound rushed across the battlefield like a roaring storm wind. Death was struck before he could move away. The force pushed him backward and pinned him to the ground. Naruko dashed forward with amazing speed, bringing her blade down in a powerful overhead strike. Death quickly blocked with his scythe, sparks flashing as the weapons met. The two clashed again and again. Then Naruko split her double-bladed sword into two separate weapons and held them in a reverse grip. 6 paths, Soul Residence Priestess Almighty True Path of Harmony. She declared. Rippling symbols spread beneath her feet. Both swords shined brilliantly until their forms began to change. One sword transformed into a beautiful blade with glowing rune-like markings along its back edge. Its hilt was beige with matching ancient designs. The second sword became a shining white blade with a blue hilt decorated in white diamond patterns. Its pommel glimmered gold beneath the light. Death narrowed his eyes. So this must be Rin's Soul Residence. Tenseiga and Bakuseiga, he thought quietly while tightening his grip on his scythe. Naruko's Tenseiga glowed bright blue while Bakuseiga shimmered green. Together, the swords released a giant arrow-shaped beam of green energy. The attack rushed forward like a comet and struck Death directly, surrounding him inside a huge dome of glowing green light. Moments later, the light faded away. Death staggered back heavily. Parts of his dark cloak had torn away, and scratches covered his skull-like mask. He breathed deeply as he steadied himself. You are stronger than I expected, Uzumaki, Death said coldly. Naruko stood tall, her red hair flowing behind her as the energy around her slowly flickered like gentle fire. Though Death's words were threatening, she refused to let fear control her heart. I will always protect my clan, she said firmly. No matter what happens. Then Naruko gave a confident grin. You'll have an easier time finding the legendary Arachne base than finding Uzashirogakure, she said proudly. My village stays hidden for a very special reason. Far away from the battle. Many miles away, hidden among tall cliffs and drifting mist, someone silently watched the battle from afar. The watcher was a tall red-haired man with calm lime-green eyes. His long ruby-colored hair was tied into a braided ponytail that reached his lower back, while part of his hair covered his right eye. A small scar rested on his chin. He wore a black forehead protector marked with a white whirlpool symbol. Over his gray kimono shirt rested a dark purple armor plate similar to the ancient armor once worn by great warriors. His gloves carried the same whirlpool emblem upon their palms, and black pants and white boots completed his attire. In his hand rested a traditional straight sword known as a gen. The blade was ghostly white and polished perfectly smooth. Its elegant gold pommel and crossguard shimmered softly in the moonlight, while the pale gray hilt rested comfortably in his hand. This man was Odaya Kanekawa Uzumaki, whose name meant calming sea. Beside him, the spirit within the gen stirred gently. Her name was Bermuda Trianguru Uzumaki, also known as Bermuda Triangle, a loyal and wise female member of the Uzumaki clan. Odaya Kanekawa watched Naruko carefully from the distance. A small smile crossed his face. The future of the Uzumaki clan shines brightly, he whispered softly. Beside Odaya Kanekawa stood another red-haired member of the proud Uzumaki clan. Her name was Yuminoi Uzumaki, whose name meant Eye of the Sea. Though she was calm and graceful, there was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. Her strawberry red hair was styled into twin buns, and her lake blue eyes reflected wisdom far beyond her years. Small talisman earrings swayed gently whenever she moved. Yuminoi wore a beautiful plum blue kimono decorated with white, red, and purple flower patterns that danced across the fabric like petals in the wind. The dark violet hanari rested neatly around her neck, while her dark blue obi and obiage matched perfectly beneath the evening sky. A gray obijime held everything together, and a gold obidome shimmered softly in the fading light. Her yellow tabi and dark tan zori completed her elegant appearance. In her hands rested a sacred vajra, a treasured ceremonial weapon of the Uzumaki clan. At its center was a polished sphere, with 5 curved prongs blooming outward like lotus petals before meeting at shining points on either side. The weapon looked both ancient and powerful, almost as if it carried centuries of stories within it. But the vajra was more than a weapon. Its spirit was Hyoki Tsumazumi Uzumaki, whose name meant frozen lake. His voice echoed gently within Yuminoi's thoughts, just as a trusted partner would speak to a dear friend. Hyoki Tsumazumi had velvet red hair brushed neatly back, dark lavender eyes, and black square-shaped sealing paper earrings that swung softly whenever he moved. 2 sharp lines crossed his eyebrows, giving him a serious appearance despite his kind nature. Nearby, Odaya Kanekawa watched the distant battle carefully and folded his arms. It is a good thing Naruko-sama ordered us to watch the fight from afar, he said quietly as he observed the clash involving the head of the Uzumaki clan. Yuminoi nodded slowly. Yes, it is, Odaya Kanekawa. At least now we understand that death plans to destroy our clan, she replied, narrowing her eyes toward the shadowy figure in the distance. Inside her mind, Hyoki Tsumazumi let out a worried sigh. So, what are we going to do if Naruko-sama loses? He asked carefully. We cannot allow death to win. Though his voice remained calm, everyone could sense the nervousness hidden beneath it. Another Uzumaki stepped forward. Bermuda Trianguru had light red hair woven into twin French braids that rested upon her shoulders. Her dark brown eyes were warm and steady, and her gentle expression soothed those around her. Hyoki Tsumazumi-san, please calm yourself, she said in a soft and comforting tone. Naruko-sama and Ashina-sama would never allow our people to fall so easily. And even if someone searches for Uzushio, we will protect our home together. She placed a hand over her heart. For more than 800 years, our clan has kept Uzu hidden from danger. We will continue to protect our family, just as our ancestors did before us. You remember our motto, don't you? Hyoki Tsumizumi's expression softened, and a small smile appeared on his face. Yes. I remember, he answered. Nothing is more important than family. We will stand together no matter what happens. The others smiled warmly at his renewed confidence. Bamuta-chan is right, Hyokitsu-kun, Odaya Kanekawa added kindly. Besides, Ashina-sama is powerful enough to cloak Whirlpool Country from both death and Maba. Our home remains safe. Everyone nodded in agreement. Then Yuminoi cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. Even if Naruko-sama loses this battle, she said with a knowing smile, we should never count her out. No matter how difficult things become, she always finds a way to win in the end. A hopeful feeling spread among the group. Now then, Yuminoi continued, gripping her vajra gently, let us keep watching the fight. Together, the four Uzumakis stood side by side beneath the evening sky, their faith in Naruko shining brightly like a guiding light through the darkness. Naruko raced across the shimmering stone courtyard, her golden scarf fluttering behind her like a bright ribbon in the wind. In her hands, the twin blades Tenseiga and Bakasaiga glowed softly with silver and blue light. Across from her stood Death, holding her tall scythe with calm focus. The two moved so quickly that sparkling gusts of wind spiraled around the courtyard. To anyone watching from far away, it might have looked as if they were blinking from place to place like dancing stars. Death swept her scythe through the air in a wide arc. Reaper Moon Sweep. She called. Naruko's bright blue eyes widened for a moment, but she quickly vanished in a swirl of golden light and reappeared safely nearby. Too slow. Naruko said with a playful grin. A soft blue aura shimmered around her leg as she leapt forward. Uzumaki, Wind Jet. She spun gracefully through the air and landed a powerful kick against the ground in front of Death. The force created a harmless wave of wind that pushed Death backward across the courtyard floor. Death steadied herself and raised one hand. A tiny beam of glowing energy sparkled from her fingertip like a shooting star. Death Beam. Naruko crossed Tenseiga in front of her, and the beam bounced harmlessly away in a shower of light. Another beam followed, but this time Naruko twirled Bakasaiga in a smooth circle, redirecting the energy safely into the sky where it burst into glittering sparks. Naruko laughed cheerfully and spun both blades into their double-bladed forms. Come on, old friend, she teased kindly. You'll have to try harder than that. Death folded her arms with a huff. You certainly have endless energy, Naruko. The battle continued like a dance beneath the glowing clouds overhead. Naruko leapt high into the air while Death's beams flashed below her like comets. With a flicker of golden light, Naruko teleported directly in front of Death and swept her blade sideways. Clang! Death blocked the strike with the wooden staff of her scythe. The sound echoed like a temple bell through the courtyard. The two smiled at one another, each enjoying the challenge. Death swung her staff carefully, tapping Naruko's shoulder and making her stumble back with surprise. Nice move, Naruko admitted. A few scratches marked Naruko's jacket, but warm golden light soon flowed around her, mending the damage as though the wind itself was helping her heal. Death sighed dramatically. I keep forgetting how amazing your healing ability is. Naruko held out her hand, and her double-bladed weapon spun back into her grasp. Her bright blue eyes glimmered with determination as a cool breeze circled around her feet. Then I'll show you something new, she said softly. Naruko raised both blades toward the sky. 6 paths, heavenly crystal sphere. Far above them, mist began to swirl in great circles. The mist slowly transformed into shining ice that sparkled like winter glass. Pink crystals bloomed across its surface like flowers in spring, while twisting branches of glowing wood wrapped gently around the growing sphere. Soon, a magnificent floating orb hovered high above the courtyard, glowing with soft colors of blue, pink, and silver. It looked less like a weapon and more like a magical moon hanging in the sky. The light from the sphere reflected in Death's eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. Naruko smiled warmly. I didn't create it to destroy, she said. I created it to protect. The crystal sphere released countless glowing petals of light that drifted peacefully across the courtyard. Wherever they landed, cracks in the stone repaired themselves, flowers bloomed, and the cold air became warm and gentle. Death lowered her scythe and smiled for the first time that day. "You really are different from everyone else, Naruko." Naruko scratched the back of her head shyly. "Well, somebody has to make the world brighter." At the sight of the enormous asteroid glowing in the sky, Death's eyes widened with fear. "If that reaches the ground, Death's city and everything nearby will be destroyed," he said urgently. "I can't let that happen." He planted his scythe firmly into the earth and clapped his hands together. Death-absorbing barrier. A giant crimson dome spread across the city, stretching far into the distance like a protective shield. The asteroid crashed against the barrier with a thunderous roar, making the entire dome tremble. Death pushed harder, pouring every bit of strength into the barrier. Beams of red light shimmered across its surface as the asteroid slowly dissolved into glowing particles. At last, the danger vanished completely. The barrier faded away. Death lowered his shoulders and took a deep breath. "I need to end this quickly," he thought. "The longer this battle continues, the more people could get hurt." Across from him, Naruko whistled softly to herself. Her bright blonde hair swayed in the wind as she smiled. "That was amazing, Death," she said cheerfully. "But I still have a few tricks left." She raised her hand, and a glowing bone-shaped blade appeared from her palm. With a swift motion, she launched it toward Death's scythe. The blade struck the weapon with a flash of light. Tiny sparks drifted through the air as the old scythe began to crumble into harmless ash. Death stared in shock. "Thomas," he whispered sadly, holding the remains of his treasured weapon. Though he was upset, he steadied himself and focused on protecting the city. Blue and black energy gathered around his hands. "Death Order Bazooka." Two glowing energy blasts appeared beside him and raced toward Naruko like comets. They burst into clouds of sparkling smoke upon reaching her position. Naruko jumped back gracefully and searched through the haze. Suddenly, she spotted Death rushing toward her from above. The two clashed in a burst of light. Naruko summoned a double-sided blade and swung carefully, while Death raised a shimmering shield to block the strike. Both stepped back, watching one another closely. Naruko smiled again and pulled her arm behind her. A swirling sphere of bright blue energy formed in her palm. Rasengan. She pressed the spinning orb against Death's shield. Cracks spread across the glowing barrier, but it still held strong. Death gently pushed her backward with a wave of forceful energy, creating distance between them. "You're incredibly powerful, Naruko," he admitted. "But this fight has gone on long enough." He raised his hands, and colorful lights swirled through the air, purple, blue, gold, white, and red, forming a calm, glowing circle around Naruko. The warm light surrounded her, washing away the strange dark energy that had been leaking from her powers. Naruko blinked in surprise as the wild storm of energy around her slowly faded. Her expression softened. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Death lowered his hands. "You lost control of your power," he explained calmly. "But you're safe now?" Naruko looked around at the peaceful city below and gave a small nod. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt," she said. "I know," Death replied kindly. The wind settled at last, and the night sky became quiet once more. Above them, the stars sparkled peacefully, as if the world itself was finally able to rest. With the Uzumakis. Each of the Uzumaki clan members wore a fierce expression. Their eyes were cold with determination, and the air around them felt heavy with worry and frustration. If looks alone could stop someone, they would have frozen Death in place long ago. "So what do we do now?" asked Hyoki Tsumazumi softly, his voice filled with concern. Odaya Kanakawa let out a long sigh before answering. "We return to the whirlpool and inform Ashina-sama. After that, we wait for his orders and remain hidden from Death, his meisters, and the weapons that follow him. But this is far from over." The others nodded in agreement. Though tired and troubled, they stood together as one family. Without another word, the Uzumakis began their journey back toward the Whirlpool village, where the crashing waves and swirling tides welcomed them home. On the other side of town, far away from the village streets, stood a mysterious woman watching everything in silence. She had a calm but serious expression and an average build. Black snake-shaped tattoos curled down both of her arms like winding rivers. Her yellow eyes gleamed brightly beneath her spiky blonde hair. Two long strands framed either side of her face, twisting together like intertwined snakes resting against her chest. She wore a long black outfit with a hood that stretched down to her knees. Strange eye-like markings decorated the hood, giving it the appearance of a serpent when worn. On her finger rested a simple golden engagement ring that shined softly beneath the evening light. This woman was known as Medusa Gorgon. To some, however, she was Medusa Uzumaki. Medusa gently rested a hand over her stomach as she watched death disappear into the distance. Her expression darkened with sadness and anger. One day, she whispered quietly, "I will make him understand the pain he caused." The wind brushed past her cloak as she turned away, disappearing into the shadows of the town. Time skip, many decades later. Many years passed, and the world changed with them. Under the silver glow of the moon, Medusa walked calmly away from a witches' gathering. Beside her was her daughter, Krona, who stayed close and quiet. As they traveled down the forest path, Medusa suddenly felt a hand tap gently against her shoulder. She turned to see Iruka Frog standing there with Mizune nearby. Medusa's face softened into a charming smile. "Hello, Iruka," she greeted kindly. Iruka smiled back warmly, unaware that Medusa's thoughts remained carefully hidden deep within her heart. Far away, beyond the forests and oceans, stories of the Uzumaki clan continued to spread across the lands. Among those stories was the tale of a bright and spirited young girl named Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko was known for her cheerful smile, endless curiosity, and her dream of bringing people together. Wherever she went, she filled the world around her with laughter, hope, and warmth. And though many challenges still waited beyond the horizon, Naruko believed with all her heart that even the darkest storms would someday give way to sunshine. Dear YouTube family, this is all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for your support and for being part of this journey. More exciting content is coming soon. Until next time, take care and stay tuned. Regards, Anime Octopus.